Good evening, goons. So we got ourselves a recap. Yep, that's what I'm going to do of the first week of SPL 14. Now, this tournament definitely needs no introduction as far as it's concerned. It's probably the one that most of us have stumbled upon first when looking into competitive Pokemon. And maybe not even starting competitive Pokemon, maybe not even having a Smogon account yet. I know that's how it went down with me. I remember um, not having a Smogon account until after I knew about Lavos and his SPL 9 run. And I didn't even know that his SPL 10 run was even better than that one. So it's needless to say that this is one of the most exciting tournaments, usually, for a lot of people. Though it can also produce mixed feelings. What kinds of things are we going to have to look out for? Well, first and foremost, in best of one formats, sometimes the best players or the most proven or the historically better players, so the ones that have been around for a longer time, aren't always going to get the best results. And we're going to see a lot of cheating in terms of like metagame prep. It's not so much that they are deliberately doing something that is against the rules, but they're deliberately doing something that allows them to cut corners and then maybe uh, get themselves a significant advantage sometimes. And this reflects in the way that these teams are built. They don't always respect the logic of what it is to make a good team when someone is thinking about a best of three format. And that's kind of weird because we usually consider, singles tournaments to be very important, but this team tournament is even more important. Yet we don't usually have a way of looking at how to build for team tours. So I'm covering all of the matches from week one, starting in order, hopefully, with the way the links, the replays have presented themselves. So I won't be spoiling anything for any of you that are watching. Of course, a number of you will have already seen this first matchup because I recorded the matchup, a replay analysis between M Dragon and Fear. So I'm gonna try and go over this one as quick as possible. Maybe go over a few things that I think we might have left out, since I was a little bit confused. But I wrote down some analysis for all but the last match, which was between Alice and Conflict. And then I'm going to close off the video perhaps with some possible predictions.
So we got ourselves M Dragon and Fear. M Dragon is representing the bigs, as you can see, and we got Fear representing the Circus Maxim or Maximus Tigers. Alrighty then. There's Zap on Zap lead. So with Zap on Zap lead, basically, Zap leads are meant to deter Cloyster, Nidoking, and Eggy, for the most part. And it's one of the few Pokemon that's able to actually chip Snorlax, chip lead Snorlax to a significant extent. In fact, a crit can prove very vital, as can a paralysis with all of that damage. Whereas other Mons can get status, but that's not necessarily as good because they can only get status but not also damage at the same time. Reasons for staying in on another Zapdos can be multiple, even though it's controversial. Since you could have a T-Wave lead, we know Fear, for instance, being an innovator in that regard, it could be a good idea to cripple the opposing Zapdos for example, a slower water or ground type. Conversely, if you feel safe with your Zapdos and you don't have a T-Wave lead, you could feel comfortable versus those very sets because you have Sleep Talk and you can absorb status, whereas they cannot. So if you manage to land a nice Thunder, that could also open up the team a little more. Sleep Talk users usually run Thunder, whereas Whirlwind and T-Wave users usually have T-Bolt. The thing is, you could also put them in a terrible spot against Back Jinx, Nidoking, or Marowak if you end up taking a T-Wave or a Hidden Power Ice or something. Now, in both cases, I would probably say that both teams likely don't have a Heracross on them, judging from the first turn. So, and it's also not particularly impactful. Each of these players go for a different move. So in the first case, we see M-Dragon aiming for paralysis in all likelihood. It's in all likelihood a Sleep Talker, and they were probably prioritizing the paralysis over the damage, whereas Fear goes for the more consistent move. 1v1s, Zapdos Dittos can be extremely terrifying. So in comes Lax on a second, no, not a second, but a first Thunder, but it missed. So Fear clicking Hidden Power Ice and then Thunder means that they're being cautious and they're aware of a potential Lax switch in. Of course, every team is going to have Snorlax, so that doesn't really say anything. But what it does mean is that, well, what's interesting at least, is that Thunder on a potential Lax switch in some cases, can give you so much more of an advantage than if you, for instance, were going to outpredict the opponent and click Hidden Power and even get a crit on a Steelix or something, even if it's HP Water. Even then, that's good, but sometimes going for the most damage on the most valuable piece, for obvious reasons, is the play to make. And we see a follow-up here. So there's the Thunder from turn 3 and a Thunder from turn 4, which paralyzes into a full para. So all of a sudden, we see M-Dragon setting up Curse. It could be Body Slam, but Body Slam is kind of underwhelming. It could be Double Edge. Double Edge is very nice because at +1, it pretty much 2-hit KOs Zapdos. But now it's in a range where it can't afford to click Double Edge. So it has to click Rest. Otherwise, if M-Dragon were to, for instance, switch out, then it's now in a 2-hit KO range, and the situation would be even worse, because if this was the primary electric switch-in, wait till Fear gets spikes, and then we'll talk, It's going to be very difficult recovering that HP back. This is probably obvious for most of you watching, but I thought I would mention this. So, since M-Dragon is forced to use Rest, it also means that Fear is in a advantageous position because they can easily go to Cloyster or Fori, should they have Fori, get their spikes up, and without too much trouble, whether it's Curse, EQ, or another set, they should be able to phase or wall the Snorlax. Now, I probably think that it's a Sleep Talk Snorlax, otherwise why would he send it in like that on Zapdos? Sure, there could be reasons to send it in like that, but yeah, I would, it's still kind of early, I guess, to say. So in comes that Cloyster, as M-Dragon matter-of-factly clicks Rest. So we're going to see here that it does in fact have Sleep Talk. We haven't actually seen the attacking move yet, and Cloyster goes, Fear clicks Surf with the Cloyster, which is a safe move to make, in my opinion. It's a safe call. Even against +1, because the Boom, should they decide to go for Boom, should they even feel forced to or compelled to, it's relatively safe in that the Snorlax would be forced to use Rest on a Sleep Talk turn or get Revenge killed. So, you know, if you're trying to value keeping that Snorlax in check for whatever special attacker you might have in the back, that could be a play to make. The problem with that is that you're either forced to follow up with a boom, a second boom, or Thunder on Zapdos, which isn't always reliable. It's not always the best thing to do. Or maybe you have a Marowak or a Machamp. So, you know, we're talking about what would come of a follow-up boom. But there are also reasons not to go for that boom, namely M-Dragon possibly having a spinner in the back. So you got to watch out for that. Fear, matter-of-factly, goes to Gengar. And this is interesting because Gengar completely walls this set. And like I said at the beginning of this video, there could be instances where players do, in fact, cheat the metagame, the team builder. And by that, I mean that someone could have a Monolax and not have a Pursuit user. We've seen Zakuru run that stall team, although it's very fundamentally different, the way that Snorlax plays out. So how does this work in this scenario? We don't quite know yet. What we do know is that Snorlax can PP stall Gengar in most cases, because it's not exactly forced to use Sleep Talk unless it gets some weird crit or it gets in some dangerous range where it can be taken out by a boom. Gengar normally have Thief or Dynamic Punch and occasionally Hypnosis. In the case of those first two moves, they're not going to deal a lot of damage except at, you know, the start, I guess. And Dynamic Punch doesn't have a lot of PP, so Gengar cannot reliably outlast the Snorlax in that case, especially if it has Boom, because it's not going to be able to click all its moves. Usually the idea is Fear wants to force the Lax to rest in that case, switch in, switch out, do all that nice stuff. The thing is, trying to PP stall a Gengar in an early game point like this also opens you up if you were to really go through with the whole thing until the very end. You know, you could potentially win, but we haven't even seen Fear's Phaser, and in the meantime, if it costs you all of your Sleep Talk PP, you're no longer going to be able to check Zapdos. So that would really suck, or Jinx, or whatever. The last thing to mention, I guess, is that Hidden Power, no, sorry, not Hidden Power, I meant to say Hypnosis, makes Gengar a little bit more able to outlast the Lax. So, but for all intents and purposes, Fear is going to be clicking Ice Punch and hope for Freeze. And that is exactly what he gets this turn. So now M-Dragon is in a tough spot. The Lax isn't necessarily done, per se. That's going to depend on a number of things. So the sad part, aside from the fact that M-Dragon is going to have to beat 6 Pokemon with 5, and as well as the fact that he doesn't seem to have a great Zapdos answer, is the fact that he needs to find a way to get this Lax to thaw out. We don't know if he has a spinner yet. But there's a 10% chance to thaw out on the end of a turn, including on the very turn that you get frozen. It's happened before. So the only likely scenario with these spikes on the ground that the Lax can come in and thaw out is if it gets phased in and it's still taking chip, or if it's in a 1v1 scenario, which is something to keep in mind, because M-Dragon may or may not rely on that very instance to try and fight his way out and get the Snorlax to use rest. So, and here we finally see Tyranitar. So Tyranitar takes a crit T-Bolt. That sucks. And why haven't we seen it up until now? Well, that's a good question. We don't necessarily know. What we do know is that this Gengar is about to click Hypnosis, okay. But the Tyranitar could be EQ. And in scenarios like this, it would most likely click EQ if it wants to. Or it could obviously also click Pursuit. But if it had EQ or Crunch, then that's a big damage, and that's a huge window of opportunity where Fear will have to really weigh the options of either taking a huge chunk or making a huge call out and switching out. Both options are difficult. And it's not that Pursuit and Earthquake are mutually exclusive. We see them on those teams. For one, Pursuit Earthquake really sticks it to Raikou. So, if this were Fire Blast T-Tar, then it would most likely either be clicking Rock Slide or Pursuit. Pursuit's scary because if the Gengar switches out and it gets crit, then it's dead. So, yeah. And it doesn't have, with Hypnosis, it doesn't have a dynamic punch with which to hit it. So, that's another thing to keep in mind. And it takes the EQ, as Fear stood in to click Hypnosis that turn. And then Tyranitar goes for Rock Slide on a turn where they would most likely click Pursuit. It's pretty much in range. And the worst that happens is that you get slept. So they go for Rock Slide instead. It's not a bad move, but it's a huge tell. In comes the Cloyster. And a nice boom on that turn. So when you boom on a Lax, especially so early, it's probably because you want something to benefit from that, like a special attacker. So that's always something to keep in mind. But without the Steelix, M-Dragon's team is a little bit susceptible to... Sorry, without the Cloyster, it's a little bit weak to the Steelix here. So in comes Zap. Is he going to attempt to catch a boom? No. They go for a Thunder, which, is what it is. And Gengar is in on this Zapdos, takes a Thunder, and gets paralyzed. So now this Gengar is pretty much dead. And what's more, M-Dragon, who has until now not revealed a Nidoking, kind of seems doomed. I highly would suspect that no one in their right mind would keep a Nidoking in the back up until this point. I suppose there could be reasons for it, but for me, especially with how they played against aggressively against that Snorlax, why should I have Nidoking in the back and not something more valuable like Gengar? Because Gengar is really good late game. Nidoking, it's not particularly known for the late game. So in this scenario, there's a chance to dodge a Thunder and boom. Or with the spikes on the ground and everything being pretty weak to this Gengar otherwise, Ice Punch isn't all in all terrible if you want to punish Fear for trying to predict a boom, but Fear has the upper hand, so it's really awkward that you would do something like that unless you feel extremely, unless Fear for some reason believed to be the unluckiest player in the world. Yeah, but for all I know, M-Dragon looks like he's gonna have to get a 4-to-1 sweep because his Lax is out of commission, T-Tar's weakened. So, but for some reason, first time I saw this game, I didn't pick that up, but that was kind of awkward because I went back to Calclad and that was not even there was even the highest roll, which that was, by the way, wouldn't have killed this Gengar. So I don't know the reason Fear chose Hidden Power there. I guess, yeah, maybe they suspected a Neoking, now that I think about it. I don't know. So we see Espeon come in, of all things. And in comes a Cloyster. Cloyster's pretty much dead to this Espeon. Espeon speed ties Gengar. So that's also kind of scary. And in comes Jolteon. Yeah, good call. Gengar's more valuable in the back right now. So Jolteon is scarier than Espeon, just because it can probably beat the Espeon in a 1v1. But that also depends on a number of things. M-Dragon's Espeon is slower than Jolteon, so they can fight back, but they're more or less forced to attack, whereas Fear has an opportunity to set up with growth. And if it's Thunder, then Fear has even more initiative. It kind of depends. Espeon could have Morning Sun, so that's also something to keep in mind. But being slower, you don't want to let the faster, stronger Mon have too many chances. So we'll see what they go for. So Fear goes for growth, and Espeon goes for Psychic. Now Jolteon is in range of a crit here, so that's something to keep in mind. Look at all that damage. T-Bolt plus Para. So even if it did get a crit, I don't know. So that kind of sucks, but the Para didn't necessarily matter. I don't think T-Tar lives Hidden Power Water. But this still matters because Gengar can kill this T-Tar now, probably. And here we are. So 23%. And I'm pretty sure at this point in the game, M-Dragon says something. But yeah, so you see, just like I said, there's this 1v1 scenario where the Snorlax can thaw at the end of the turn. It's not like in other gens where they thaw at the beginning. This can thaw at the end of a turn. So yeah, M-Dragon says, damn, that was a 32% kill. Probably referring to the kill on the T-Tar there. But the fact of the matter is, Jolteon had already dealt a low roll to T-Tar, so if it were any other roll, this Gengar was definitely killing it. And yeah, M-Dragon is gone. So there's the game. And we're going to be moving on to Game 2, which I found to be pretty exciting, between Watashi and Sentry Express. Sentry Express is more than a simple ladder hero. He is a number of things. But yeah, we got Watashi here, who did a nice showing in GSCPL. And this is their SPL debut, for GSC at least. So I'm going to get my notes up for this game as well. And we already see something very, very interesting, which is a Gengar lead. Gengar lead is like, what? It's not common, and it's almost never used. But the truth is, it actually has some utility. Off the top of my head, there are things that it can do, like Thief, Boom, have Debond. You know, if you want to bait a Curse Lax, it could have Hypnosis. So it can actually do a lot of nice things. It doesn't necessarily match up super well versus electric leads, but aside from that, it's not bad. There isn't really enough empirical evidence to suggest what exact moves it should or could have in this position. So if I'm Sentry Express, I'm just going to assume the worst, you know. Thief, Hypnosis, they're both very deadly moves turn one, depending on what set you might have or what mon you might have in the lead. In this case, Thief is very valuable against the Snorlax, so it might be in Sentry Express's best interest to switch out. A lot of players respect Thief more than anything else, and that says a lot. So, you know, the only lead Pokemon that I would ever suspect to stay in on a Gengar would be like Raikou or Zapdos, or something that could OHKO it. like, for instance, Nidoking. But what I believe to be the reason why it's not so common is because Gengar isn't nearly as threatening a presence once that first move is clicked. Once that first turn is over, it loses that offensive presence it otherwise has. As for the Lax lead, I like it because even though it doesn't have a high utility like most of the other Mons out there, it gets so much information out of your opponent if it's like a curse lead, because you force them to react. Of course, there's always that chance that it's just a sleep talk and no curse or something, you know. But for all I know, I think Sentry Express isn't going to stay in here. And Watashi clicks Thief. And I guess they're going to, yeah, they go to Steelix. Steelix is great. Steelix is great. It's a great Mon because it pairs very well with Gengar. And Sentry Express does what I like to call the South American move. Double switching to Cloy into whatever the opponent is bringing in response to Zapdos. The only switch into Zapdos that checks Cloyster and Zapdos is Raikou. All the rest are mostly ground types or Lax, which don't OHKO Cloyster. So, all right. So we got a Cloy on Cloy, and Sentry Express gets a nice Toxic and Spike's advantage. There's a lot of momentum going into these turns, just performing excellently. Not much else can be said. Gengar would probably click something like Ice Punch, in my opinion. But instead, they go for Hidden Power Water. So Hidden Power Water is not something you see every day. But look at how much damage that does. 46%. I'm not sure if the Lix is in range at 48, but that was huge. There's so much progress to be made with this position right now. Aside from the Gengar having stolen lefties from Sentry Express's Zapdos, I would say that Sentry Express is in a dominating position right now. And yeah. Then Sentry goes to Steelix. And doubles to Snorlax. So really good call once again. Lured the Zapdos to clicking Thunder because you don't want to feel stupid when you get boomed on. And Sentry Express very well could because he sees no spinner. And then he goes to Lix and then basically lures Watashi into clicking Hidden Power. So that's wonderful. Mind you, Gengar can survive an EQ. And I think Steelix might be able to, but that still doesn't change the fact that Sentry Express has a lot of momentum. I think it's an Earthquake Lax. And yeah. If I were Watashi, in this turn right now, I would go for Thunder. Just because of the chip, and in case that's like a Curse EQ. So they get a nice para there, and we see Double Edge from Sentry Express's Snorlax. As they go into their own. So Watashi goes to Lax on Sentry Express's rest turn, which is nice. And they set up, which is good, I would say. And look at this turn here. So in this position, Sentry Express isn't necessarily at a huge advantage, but I would say they're in a good position. They have their a Boom Mon in, a very healthy phaser, and a normal resist. So really good position right now. In what looks like a Ditto, but they've been playing fundamentally very different. We've seen Thief on that Gar. This one doesn't have Thief. It has Hidden Power Water. Goes for Toxic, which is safe, especially against Body Slam. Body Slam is kind of underwhelming. Goes for a Surf, and we see Flamethrower, which is interesting. So Watashi is equipped for stall, but Curse Flame isn't always the best against offense if you can't keep up with the pressure. So CE continues to remain super diligent, and you know, he can definitely phase the lax in this position right now. He could boom, but he doesn't have to because he's not that much under pressure. And now Watashi will have to use rest because, well, they could attack, but they switch out. So I believe that that was in the hopes of preserving the lax, but it's kind of a suboptimal play because it's going to take 25% next time it comes in. So they go to Gengar, and I don't think this has a great move for a phaser, but we're yet to see. Ice Punch on Licks is kind of awkward because it would take so much damage. I was thinking it would have at least Hypnosis or Destiny Bond. You know, we'll see. I think that it's kind of awkward to make this play and even to make that choice of having this lax because now, look at it. It's going to die to the slightest breeze. It's at 47%, but it's actually, in reality, it's at 22% or 28 or whatever. So, and the Licks is already weakened, so yeah. There's that roar. It was a good roar. What did they end up doing? They clicked Ice Punch, so that's not bad. Goes for another roar. Probably didn't want to lose the Zapdos, and we see that the Nidoking is Thief, so as Century Express goes to their own Zapdos. So now we see Zapdos Dittos. Century's Zapdos gets parried. Watashi's does not. And Century Express is going to go to their Lax. So the Century's Zapdos is in a position of being pretty much fodder to whatever. Not much is going to live. But he could always bring it in on the Steelix, so that's something. Whereas Watashi Zapdos on turn 21 pretty much had to click rest, so yeah. It's really nice to see that with minimal planning and better prep, CE is in a position where they can still fall back if they need to. And Watashi's team is already pretty worn out. Oh, shit. My display froze. All right, let's try and refresh the page, I guess. 22. All right. Very worn out, I would say. Poison Cloyster, Licks, Nidoking that didn't get to Thief yet, so it's in 2-hit range of Zapdos and probably also Gengar. So yeah, a nice double edge on that turn. We haven't seen what other move Century might have, but judging by the team comp, it's unlikely to have mono. It's probably EQ. In comes the Cloy. All right. And this Cloyster's on a timer here. Very diligent Surf. In comes the Gengar. Goes for T-Bolt. I bet they calced Hidden Power Water, but I don't know if it kills. Gengar on Gengar. So, oof, a freeze. And all of a sudden, now Century Express isn't in as good a spot as they were initially. And that happens. Sometimes you get the worst of luck. It was a crit. It was a speed tie win a crit, and a freeze. All on the same turn. So we see an EQ miss as Watashi switches to Zapdos. Fair enough. In comes the Lax. A Thunder miss. And an EQ. So it does reveal to be EQ. They're trading blows here. Good timing from Watashi. And so Watashi clicks Roar, which is interesting. So at this point, they roared in Gengar. And it couldn't have been better for Century Express because given the team right now, Watashi's Lax is at low percent. Zapdos cannot switch into the Starmie. The Steelix is in range. The Nidoking is in range. It's like the fact that the Gengar died to Spikes means the turn ended and they could have chosen to go to whatever Mon. So it couldn't have been a better time for that Gengar to be roared in. Gengar is going to take a Surf, and it's not quite in range of Surf. So there's that. Watashi probably attempting to spin block, but as we see, we got Psychic on the Starmie. Bet you guys didn't expect that. Psychic Starmie. I've actually made a post on how good Surf Psychic Starmie could be on offense. I'm not saying that I invented it, and I'm not signaling anything new, but since Starmie has been for a very long time considered a stall-only mon, and only in like 2019, 2020, where they're starting to use it on offense, people have been using a lot of Nightmare, Sub-Nightmare. But this actually has Surf Psychic, which is really good. We've seen some T-Wave Starmies before, but we got this off Starmie. It has Surf Psychic Rapid Spin, and it gets a nice, wonderful spin that will probably matter a lot. Cloyster booms on the Lax. So now it's definitely, absolutely, entirely dead. It's cadaverific. And the Zapdos comes in. So this situation is looking very, very dramatic for Watashi right now. You can't count them out just yet. The Zapdos is probably going to die. No leftovers recovery, so no point in doing any fancy switches to bring it back. They do dodge a Thunder, however, but they full para, so yeah. Starmie threatens here. And Zapdos is probably just out of range. So things went quite well for Watashi in that regard. And so what are the options? Like, what are the outs that Watashi has? I would say that at this point, they have to... Well, they obviously have to get rid of Snorlax, but their best way of doing so is through either taking lefties on a very risky turn and then weakening it with Zap, or booming on it in all likelihood. And that's not going to be easy because Century Express has 2 Mons with which to catch that. Starmie is very helpful in this matchup, but it's not the win condition, per se. Now, if Century Express beats Zapdos, then Starmie wins the game for him. Century Express has multiple ways to win, whereas Watashi has to think on their feet. So, and they take an EQ, which sucks, but it's a speed tie, so it's anyone's game here. They could boom, but they don't, and they get a nice crit. Yeah, so they go for the EQ. If Century Express had tried to catch that with their Steelix, then it probably would have died. So very diligent there. That switch to Starmie was totally underrated. Really good. Goes to Licks. which is interesting. Interesting to go to Licks there, but they do it, so... In comes me, and me is dangerously low now. So trying again to catch a move, and they're going to click Sentry Express. He's going to click Recover. Doesn't want to stay in, obviously. But Watashi goes for Hidden Power, not for Thunder. Probably trying to chip that Licks. We can go forward a bit. There's some more damage being dealt. There's some Sleep Talk PP being used. 6 PP left for Sentry's Lax's Sleep Talk. More Thunders being clicked through Sleep Talk. And in comes Licks. And wow. That could have been the game right there. But nope. Now with Lax lower on Sleep Talk PP, it's no longer free. So the idea of conserving Thunder PP from Watashi is not a bad call. So the Nidoking doesn't look like it has Lovely Kiss. It has not been able to click. In all these turns that it's been in, it has not been able to click Thief, which is insane. Because it would simply die. Although, maybe clicking Thief wouldn't have been all that bad. So yeah. Now, Sentry Express only has 2 Sleep Talks left. So it's, you know, it's threatening offensively, but it's in dangerous percentages now. Though, fortunately for him, Watashi can't switch to Licks. So, goes to Nido. Good call, good turn. But they go for Thunder. All right. Okay. I might have clicked Thief or EQ. EQ wouldn't have been bad. You know, they probably wanted to get rid of the Starmie, but that was a bit of an over-prediction. There's a Roar here. Roar again. Nidoking is weak. Still did not manage to get to click Thief. They just go for the Ice Beam, hoping for the hacks. It doesn't come. And that's it. That's the game. Now, I don't think it was quite over yet. It was a little bit preemptive. But it was a good showing. Zapdos definitely had the PP to stick it to Sentry Express, especially considering how the Lax had only 2 Sleep Talk PP. You never know if one of those Thunders lands a crit. You know, yeah, sure, 11 rest PP, but still. All right, so that's that. I really liked the choice, the team choice from Sentry Express. Watashi's team wasn't bad, but I definitely like the HP Water Gengar plus T-Bolt combo. That's great. The Starmie. It turns out that Gengar is just an excellent partner for Starmie. All the time I see offensive Starmie, it's paired with a good Gengar, so that's wonderful. Ice Punch might actually have been nicer in this matchup, though. So, yeah. Anyways, moving on. I did not mention which teams these players were from. Sentry Express is from the Congregation of the Classiest. Watashi is from the Stark Sharks. And now we're going to move on to the Dragon Spiral Tyrants, Jester, versus the Wi-Fi Wolf pack with D4 Repertoire. D4 has ABR for support, also Tony Flagon and a bunch of stuff. So yeah, this is also going to be interesting. All right. Though I do have to say, I saw this and I kind of felt like it was. I'm going to contradict myself. Okay, I said this is going to be interesting. I actually found it to be very awkward. So Lax on Lax. Curse Lax can mean you want to be good versus offense and, you know, try to gain momentum right away. Maybe you can force Cloyster in. The other thing about Curse Lax leads, if these two are Curse Lax leads, I mean, we've seen Sentry Express use Sleep Talk, EQ Lax. But if you are Curse Lax, generally, you're okay with the fact that Cloister might be in the lead position or might be coming in. Like, you're not all worried about them getting their spikes before you, because you're going to force that Cloy to boom, probably. And then you can probably spin it away, something like that. So Jester is going to be the one to switch to his Dickwang and set up the spikes on turn 2. And we see here that D4 has a EQ on this Lax. So goes for an EQ there. Jester goes for a Surf. That unfortunately cost the whole Mon. And I remember calcing this. It was pretty much in range, so a bit risky. A bit risky there with the slow reaction to go for all 3 of these moves. If you switch to Cloister, that's a totally fine play. But generally, I would click, 2 out of these 3 and not all 3, and I would follow up with a boom. Or I would just get the spikes, dip, and try and phase the Lax as soon as possible, something like that. Because this can go haywire. If for any reason, you have Golem now, you want to try and phase it, sure, you can. You could also boom. But if you get crit, you're going after, so you could get crit and lose. Like, you could just lose on the spot. So that would suck. That doesn't happen, though, so, all right. Pastor. All right, so we got that. We got that out of the way. The Machamp threatens the Golem because it outspeeds it. And D4 will get to spin. So far, we see this Golem and Eggy. It looks like the team kind of, I don't know, maybe it's too soon to say. In comes the Zap, and here is finally that spin opportunity that D4 is certainly going to seize. Sure, they can phase, but they could do that. They can't do that now, so they would probably have to boom or do that. Exactly. Switch to Cloy. At +1, Cloister survives a 2-hit KO. Double Edge, I think. Unless it's like Hidden Power Electric, in which case the bulk is less. But as you can see here, D4 can boom and does just that. And we see there's the Zap, the Golem. On a team like this, I normally would have expected something like Boomlax, a Raikou, and a Hera in the back. But there's no Raikou. The Golem is weak. And this Eggy is here. And it's not a perfect Zapdos check. So this team is a little weak with Curse EQ. It's kind of weak into Electrics, which is kind of awkward. So in comes the Golem. And Jester goes for Psychic. All right. Fair. Thunder Miss. Another, it would appear. Double Edge. This kind of sucks. The Double Edge crit on the Machamp. It's as if D4 had some sort of sixth sense and they switched to the Machamp in expecting the Zapdos to get O-Code or something, but that kind of sucks. So the Machamp is dangerously low. It can get its HP back, of course. In comes Eggy to switch in on that Machamp. And there's a crit Psychic. 41%, so I do think that mattered. As the Jester's Eggy would not have been able to click boom. So, and now we see a Raikou, so it's a double elect Machamp, the one we saw in the GSC Invitational 2. So there's that. There's a Moltres, which is, I don't love it. I don't really love Moltres. It's not the fact that Jester has Moltres, but I don't like it because it's very hard to build around. So it goes to Moltres because Eggy is close to Rock Slide range or a Cross Chop crit range. And I'm just thinking right now, if if D4 had a protect on this Machamp, it would have been so good. Because, man, I love protect Machamp, but it kind of comes at the cost of either curse or EQ or something. So, yeah. So we see in comes the Golem. And Moltres again. And here, yeah, so I really like that play. That one was really good. Just a Galaxy Brain play. I mean, I thought to myself that it wasn't necessary because he could just go to Raikou. But if for any reason Jester goes to Snorlax, then he would be in trouble. So this is a pretty elegant solution. It hurts Exeggutor, and it theoretically opens up the team to Machamp, I guess, without that boom in the way. So, yeah. And should it have chipped Eggy? Like, should Jester have chosen to go to Eggy? So are they going to boom? No, they go for a Giga Drain, which is actually quite a diligent play. I would say you do that, and you're no longer in range of a Cross Chop, so that was actually pretty nice. In comes the Moltres, who's not doing all that much, but Lax is in range of a Fire Blast. It's Charcoal, so yeah, that definitely kills even without Sun. But this is scary because if this Raikou were Thunder, this Lax would be dead, and the game would have already been over here. So instead, it's T-Bolt. So, yeah. In comes Machamp. Lax has to burn a turn. And it's prediction time. Well, actually, you're just going to go for Rock Slide and miss, but it's still a kind of prediction. So there's the another Giga Drain turn. And now it's out of range of Hidden Power Ice. And with Raikou gone, then Jester would join the conversation again and start to be super threatening. So now D4 has to respect Jester's Eggy. So it goes for Hidden Power, but in comes the Lax. So D4 is going to have to react here and force it out either with Golem or Machamp. And here is the first of a series of predictions that D4 is going to have to make just to maintain some level of momentum here. So with that Raikou in against Eggy, he goes there, he doubles back again, and he's going to triple. He's going to do a triple switch. And now the Eggy is even more chipped, and again, a fourth switch. And they go for Cross Chop, but unfortunately it misses. Goes to Raikou. And now, once again, there's that whole conversation, yada, yada, yada. But they go for T-Bolt, just to get some of that chip and put it in range of Hidden Power Ice. So not a bad play, if I say so myself. Lax is weakened all of a sudden, but Lax can also click Double Edge here. It could crit like last time. What's going to happen? No crit. 47 damage, though. That's so much. And then, bang, another switch. That was a really nice one. So, another double switch. Very aggro. Jester kind of semi-fumbles here and switches out. The Lax is dead. The game is over. This Eggy is in range, and bye-bye. Still, despite everything, it was nice. I didn't particularly love it, but I guess I've been a little bit harsh the first time I saw this game. There are some good things to praise about it. Moving on, we got the Ruiners versus the Scooters. We got Siatam versus Hyogafodex. And this game is quite long, but I can abbreviate it. So, yeah. In this scenario, we have two teams. I only watched the first 65 turns of this game. So we got Lax, Raikou, and in comes a Skarmory. So there's a Scout turn. more scouting through Whirlwind. So we see Raikou on one end and Raikou on the other, and Fori, and another Raikou. So this one has T-Bolt, the other one not yet revealed. It also has T-Bolt. Hyoga's Raikou is recovering leftovers after Siatam consistently. And in fact, it has Roar, so it's probably trying to be slower than Siatam's Raikou. Which also means it's slower than a potential Starmie. Tyranitar is roared in, and then we see a Starmie. So this is very much looking like a Ditto, in a stall Ditto. We got all of this stuff going on. Do I have any notes on this? I should. Yeah, it's not something that was drastic. The only thing I want to say is that Hyoga's Raikou is a Roar user, so it means it can be forced to use Rest, and the opponent can start to spin away spikes or set them up. On the other hand, Skarmory on Siatam's side is the phaser, which means unless that Lax's Boom or its Mixed Lax, it's not likely going to get past this Skarmory. Of course, yes, it could also be Flamethrower for all we know, but we've seen Earthquake, so that's... Unless Hyoga took something from Earthworm's book, that's probably not also going to have Flamethrower. So there's a Rest. We don't know if this is Sleep Talk, and now we do. So Sleep Talk, probably Hidden Power Water. T-Tar, this is looking like the Zakuru team on both ends, actually. And we got Fori on Fori, Hidden Power Fire trades. Very scary play to make, because you still don't actually know what the opponent has. And especially on Siatam's end, I don't know. Like, if I do this, and then Hyoga has Misdreavus, I'm going to be so upset after. Because I won't be able to spin away the spikes, and I'm not going to get many other opportunities to set up my own spikes anyways. So that's kind of scary. It's kind of, I guess they're equal in going for that move. Plus, if Hyoga or Siatam were to switch out, they would now know that the other player has Hidden Power Fire, and then they don't in turn. So it's kind of weird. I probably would have scouted that. In comes the Starmie. So, and there's another Starmie. Are they going to kiss? They don't have any mouths, silly. Yeah. So I'm not a huge fan of staying in on Snorlax with Starmie, especially when my other spinner is chipped. So they go to Skarmory. Again, I guess Siatam is trying to be diligent here and scout and, consider the possibility of everything, like mixed Laxes on stall do in fact exist. It's not easy to scout for that, but okay. So Snorlax tries to chip that Fori. I missed that turn there. I'm going to go back just one sec. Okay, but doesn't manage to, So it is a mirror match, but the moves aren't the same. We saw Siatam has a Sleep Talk Raikou, Hyoga has a Roarku, and that probably means he has a Sleep Talk Skarm. The difference between one and the other aren't super important in this matchup per se, but Sleep Talk Skarm is very good against Lastmon Curselax. And it can even withstand Lovely Kiss or even 1v1, for instance, a Curse Tar, I guess. It depends. Or a non-Fire Blast Marowak. So that's nice. Whereas Whirlwind Skarm is a little better versus Baton Pass. So moving along. We get some chip. Starmie switch in. Probably want to avoid Toxic. Goes to Fori, which resists and is immune. Can set up spikes here. Or go for Hidden Power Fire. Okay. I mean, you didn't lose anything, so... All right, in comes that. So me on me. In comes a Lax here. Some chip on the Raikou, which matters because it's Roar. And Raikou doesn't kill the Fori at this range, but still, you want to switch out of that. You don't want to lose your Fori. Doesn't kill because it's T-Bolt. If it were Thunder, it probably did. Switching in, again, Starmie on Snorlax. I don't like that. I mean, if you lose your spinner, it's over. So there's a Drill Peck, some nice chip on Fori. A little bit risky to take so much chip on your Fori. Going for Toxic. And some more chip. So Hyoga for now is in a in the lead in this Spikes War. But he also has a chance to KO Starmie should Siatam come in because of this T-Tar. If T-Tar has Crunch in Pursuit, that could also be beneficial from that specific range. You know, 54% on the Mii. There's a Roar. The Fori is just barely in range of T-Bolt, so you're no way you should stay in on that. Okay. Another T-Bolt there. Roar. Lax. And yeah, this is another weird thing because we saw already that the Lax has EQ, but it's a little bit better, I guess, than trying to fish with Starmie. Not elegant, I guess, but at the same time, it does threaten the Lax at the very least, and it can dissuade any other momentum grabber right now because Raikou is in dangerous percent against T-Tar, and so is Fori, so is Starmie, so yeah. Moving on, just a lot of staying in here. In comes Siatam's T-Tar. Is it Fire Blast? We're gonna find out right now. Curse. Okay, goes to the Starmie. Gonna use Rest. I'm gonna try to spin, but again, now it's in a dangerous percent. If it uses Recover and then it gets crit, it dies anyways. So he's gonna switch out. And we still haven't seen any third or fourth move on Hyoga's end. Obviously not going to stay in on the Raikou, so it goes to their own Raikou before he gets some HP back. There we go. A hidden power. And then this turn I don't like at all. I remember seeing it. You're not Thunder, so this wasn't super helpful. And you just lose the Raikou. And the Snorlax is almost definitely going to get that HP back. So we don't know if this is sub. It's most definitely spin. So, I mean, I should hope that it's spin. There have been cases of sub Nightmare Me on stall. But I don't like it. That doesn't mean that it's just because I like it they consulted me or something, but whatever. Moving on. This is an important turn. Siatam gets Toxic on the Mii of Hyoga, so that's huge. Huge because now this Starmie is not going to be able to even stay in on Fori in the long run, and the spikes are going to matter. So yeah, this is big. This is big. Siatam is obviously going to stay in until Hyoga is going to feel compelled to switch out. So now it's going to take damage. It's at 68. It's now in a dangerous range. Hope, again, more staying in on Lax, which I do not need to repeat myself, is not great, especially after Sleep Talk has been revealed and every move has been revealed. So, sure, the last thing to worry about at this point is T-Tar, but you have a Starmie. If you keep the Mii healthy, then you don't have to worry about T-Tar. It's at 45%. So, Skarm not actually attacking that turn, probably wanting to take the momentum and get spikes, but they don't manage to. Siatam is down him on, but could eventually win the spikes war, so that's interesting. There's Curse, and here is the moment of truth. What is Siatam gonna do? Takes a surf, super risky there. Takes and deals the definitive rock slide damage, and now Siatam can outlast Hyoga as long as this Lax is resilient enough. But it's kind of scary to go for a move like that. So he nabs that KO on the primary spinner and is up 2 spinners to 1 in the spikes war. At this point, we just move along a bit. They're gonna get the spikes right there. 4E is in range, and it's one of the slowest mons on the team, so it's not likely gonna get to be able to spin or set up spikes. Raikou, Lax, it actually does spin. Takes a double edge. It's now at 15%. We haven't seen Toxic on the Skarm, but doesn't matter, I guess. I mean, it sort of matters. 4E comes in, gonna go for spikes almost definitively, and Hyoga reveals Crunch on the T-Tar. In comes the Skarm, Whirlwind, Raikou, Drillpeck. Yeah, so now Siatam is it's his game to lose. So despite that unfortunate event, that could probably have been avoided, I guess, Siatam can quite easily manage now. It's too bad, though, because I kind of think that Siatam could have used a team he showcased once, like a Curse Rockslide Flamethrower Tar. That was cool. I think I've seen something like that in GSC Cup this year as well. So the Lax almost gets flinched, but that doesn't happen. And if it did get flinched, then Siatam would have lost. Lol. But yeah, we haven't seen all of the moves on Siatam's 4E. Hyoga isn't doing all too well. And so moving on. The Tar died. The Raikou died. The Lax is going to die. Dead. No. Dead? No. Dead. Okay. And yeah, this is basically over. There's a lot of this. Like a lot of this. Like a lot of this. Okay. Just because there's no electric, so Siatam kind of has to do this. And yeah, there we go. Oof. So Siatam wins. I don't think Hyoga was very convincing in this game. I didn't cut any slack to Siatam, but Hyoga seemed kind of tired, and I don't know. All right, moving on. I don't have a script for this one. I don't have notes. This is the last game of the week, and then we're going to move on to a possible prediction. So, yeah. We got Alice versus Conflict. Alice on the Raiders and Conflict on the Cryonicles. So, same as before, as we already said, the Zap on Zap lead. There's a para versus a miss, so that kind of sucks. But there's also another miss, so that evens it out. Cloy coming in, the Rainbringer. Lunar Eclipse. Lax comes in here. This is the game I remember the least, despite me having liked it quite a bit, actually. So with Conflict setting up the spikes, and there's a classic mon of his. It's Porygon 2. So double normal offense from Conflict's end. It gets lovely kissed by Alice's lead. And we've seen... I think we've seen Lovely Kiss double edge EQ, but yeah. In any case, switching out a Gengar like that, went to Cloister, but for a bit, Alice will not be able to set up spikes. So she goes for EQ on an incoming Cloy. Conflict is going to double and be very aggressive and bully Alice out of being able to use spikes. So there's another hidden power. And Conflict catches the boom, so that was really diligent there. Basically achieving a big goal, which is getting rid of the primary normal resist on Alice's team. Too bad that Porygon 2 was put to sleep, so Conflict is going to have to win with Lax. Alice finally gets the spikes, and we know this is not Sleep Talk. So this team is in a bit of trouble right now versus this Zap. And there's Golem. Golem's going to spin, probably. Yeah. And probably phase, I guess. I don't know. So Conflict is clearly keeping that P2. It's sleep fodder. It's never going to get phased in, so it's never going to really be put to risk. And that also means nothing is ever going to get put to sleep again. Except, hello, says Titar. Hi, says Gengar. Go to sleep, says Gengar. Titar says, I'm well rested already. Gengar says, no, I insist. And Titar's like, nah. And Gengar keeps trying to roofie Titar, but the police catch him. So, yeah. I hope you liked my Dr. Seuss narration there. So we got EQ. So quick crash course on Conflict offense. If you see two normal types, the Lax is most likely a wall breaker. Could be Boom, could be Lovely Kiss, it could be No Rest, it could be Double Edged Thunder, you name it. EQ. And there's a hidden power Electric. Trying to catch that Cloister. Conflict making some nice plays here. And Alice is keeping up. It's really cool. It's really fascinating. I think this is the most entertaining game to watch. It doesn't even require all that much breaking down. But there's a Boom, because that Zapdos is simply annoying. And, uh-oh, 4 fighting weeks staring down a Machamp. Machamp's going to set up. And crit. Crit after a curse. This Machamp is gone. Oof. And that's the second crit on a Machamp this week. You saw Jester versus D4. That sucks. D4 didn't have spikes, though, on his side. So all of a sudden, Alice still is in the conversation, but probably very frustrated at that crit. She's gonna go to sleep with the Lax, put it to bed. And the Zapdos can do something. We didn't even get to see if this Lax is cursed, but I guess we're going to see now. Thunder. Para. Double Edge. Crit again. La la la. Nice switch to Lax. Don't let Conflict set up, basically. And it's Sleep Talk. It's Sleep Talk Double Edge. All right. I really wanted to see what that P2 had, but I guess we're not going to find out because it froze. So, Sands of Time, is that a Prince of Persia reference? Crunch Tar. So Crunch is nice. It's not the best coverage move, but I sure am liking the whole lack of Surf Tar. I think that mon is kind of cringe. That Spadef drop could matter, though. Except, unfortunately, Alice's Zap is in double edge range, so can't switch in. So Conflict switches out. And he booms on the Zap. And now, I don't know, either you have like Screech for some reason, or you just gotta hope for a crit. Or a flinch, or both, preferably. There's one. And do we get number 2? Nope. She would have needed 3. Goes to Lax. Very scary. Gets an EQ. Could lose the speed tie here. It does, but does not get hit. Gonna set up. But Alice doesn't have a Lovely Kiss to use. And gets crit. Good lord. All right, that was exciting. Imagine being the best player and also getting a lot of luck. All right. That's too bad. So that's that for the first week. So on to predictions, I guess. I could just do this. This could be the faster way to do that. Let's see. Week 2. Could just look for my own predictions here. So out of these players, we got Raichi from the Stark Sharks versus D4. We got M-Dragon versus Alice. So we got Siatam versus Real Jester, Conflict versus Hyoga, and Century Express versus Fear. Now, if Hyoga... I don't think Hyoga is going to bring stall. And I don't think of Hyoga as a stall player. Hyoga doesn't necessarily build a lot of teams of his own, but I think that something interesting could come of this between the Scooters and the Cryonicles. Hyoga versus Conflict could be a match to look out for, but if I had to put my money on something being entertaining, I would say Century Express and Fear is going to be a lot of fun, and I mean a lot of fun to watch. Century Express has some interesting builds. Fear has some interesting builds. Siatam is... I think Siatam is most likely going to beat Real Jester. Siatam has more support on his team. Could come up with some surprising things, but is also just a solid player. Real Jester is a very high-octane kind of guy. Not necessarily a great builder. But there is a chance that Jester beats Siatam if Siatam doesn't feel confident and maybe loses momentum on one slip up. Because Jester's the kind of guy to capitalize on a slip up. Or something like that. M-Dragon, it's still too soon for me to tell. I like to see him motivated, and that's cool. I'm sure that it'll be fun, and M-Dragon versus Alice will certainly be a game to remember, in my opinion. And I am actually putting my money on Raichi against D4. I still think it's a bit too soon to say. D4 certainly has the support, certainly has the star power on his team to get a lot of prep into this game. But I think leaving those aspects aside, I feel like Raichi is just pretty smart when it comes to OU and other tiers. I think Raichi has the higher game IQ. But D4 could level up here. D4 has been doing very well this year, and in the past years, I would say, for himself. I didn't say who I think would win between Century Express and Fear. I think... This one's really interesting. I I simply don't know. I would say that fear wins, but it's not as strong a favorite as in other cases. Fear is the second best player in the pool, if not the best in the eyes of some. So there's that to consider. There's the fact that he's just very methodical. He might already have something in store for him. Century Express is somewhat of a high variance guy, but very smart when it comes to GSC. It's probably his best tier. I guess there's also black and white. I don't know. But those small adaptations, he's going to have to bring in everything, every experimental, tricky thing, and he's going to just have to do everything in his power to just throw fear off guard. And if he does, that'll be super impressive and super sick and awesome. And yeah, I can't wait. But yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed. This has been a pretty long recording, so see ya. And I'll do my best to upload these, I guess, if I can. Like I said, no promises, but also at the latest, I think videos like these should be up on Thursday of each week, but we'll see. We'll see what can happen.